Okay. Show me.
Hi there guys, welcome back to the Dshot channel. Thank you very much for tuning in for a very long-term review of this iFlight copter here. This is the iFlight Nazgul5 HD. So this is a 5-inch Freestyle DJI digital quadcopter. However, it's also available as an analog quadcopter. So the Nazgul5, in 2019 the Nazgul5 was the value quadcopter in the 5-inch size. So, and in 2020 this is still a value proposition. Definitely a good value for money quadcopter. However, there is now the Dshot F4 Roma. I don't have that quadcopter, so I can't speak of that quadcopter yet. I have it on order, so more on that quadcopter in a later video. In this video, I'm gonna give you again my very long-term review of this, the Nazgul5 from iFlight. I'll also show you what tune I ended up with this quadcopter. The base tune definitely didn't work too well. I'll also tell you why the base tune didn't work out perfectly. It's not horrible, but it definitely needed some work, this quadcopter. So a long-term review. And why is this such a long-term review? Well, basically because I ordered me this quadcopter for, well, basically for fun. Not really to review it, but by now I've done so many flights with it. It stands to reason to do a long-term review of it. Also, I got some questions about this quadcopter, what the best tune is for this quadcopter. Apparently other people also ran into, well, not issues, but a demand for a better tune for this quadcopter. So, well, that's a good reason to do a video, a follow-up video on this quadcopter, even though I never did an introduction on this quadcopter. So I ordered me this quadcopter myself because it's a no-nonsense basher. To me it's a no-nonsense quadcopter, and it's a nice value. If you don't want to build a quadcopter and you just want to fly around, this is a good option, I think. So at the time I'm shooting this video, this quadcopter, both the digital and the analog versions are actually on sale at Banggood. I'll include links to both the version I have here, the Vista version, DJI digital, and the analog version in the description of this video. Again, those are on sale right now. If you watch this video on a later date, they might not be. Check it out, I'd say. So, value quadcopter, yeah. The 2019 version was a value quadcopter, and not much has actually changed to this quadcopter. That is, maybe that's a downside, a little bit. Especially if I compare it again to that new Dshot, the F4 Roma. Not much has changed on this quadcopter compared to the 2019 version. So that makes it possibly a little bit outdated, but well, it's a value quadcopter. You don't pay top dollar for this quadcopter, and that goes for both the DJI Vista and the analog version. You get a no-nonsense quadcopter that flies well, and it doesn't, well, cost you an arm and a leg. But in my review or in my presentation of the Dshot F4 Roma, I will make a comparison between the two. For instance, the Dshot has more modern motors. What has changed actually to the 2019 model, and for as far as I can tell, well, in 2019 the DJI digital version didn't exist yet, I think. I'm not completely sure, but I reviewed the analog version. So we now have the DJI digital version. The frame has had an update. The arms are thicker and they are wider at the base over here, where they meet the center of the frame. So this quadcopter's frame is definitely an improvement. It's you can feel while flying it that it's more stiff. I haven't had horrible crashes with this quadcopter, so I don't know if it's sturdier, but I would expect it to be sturdier. And that's the major difference actually between the 2019 version of the Nazgul5 and this 2020 version. The stack, the electronics are, for as far as I know, the same. It's an F4 stack, right? And it's a BL Heli 4-in-1 ESC. Value quadcopter, right? And we get the same, exactly the same motor. So these are the Xing-E's, they're value motors. And so that's all pretty much the same. as the 2019 version of this quadcopter. And there's nothing really wrong with that. Also, I think this quadcopter looks very nice. It's a no-nonsense quadcopter, but with these green parts it looks vivid, right? I like the looks of this quadcopter. Very, very nice. One thing you don't get, by the way, with this quadcopter is an action cam mount. And that's not a horrible omission. What action cam mounts should they include, right? You have all kinds of action cams, but some general purpose mount would have been nice. Now, one other difference from the 2019 version is that this one is a little heavier. And that's because the arms are thicker and they probably beefed up the center of the frame a little as well. So it's a little bit heavier. Combine that with it having the same motors, the quadcopter definitely flies a little bit different than the 2019 version. And that actually is the reason why this quadcopter needs a tune update, a different tune. The 2019 version was, I guess, basically in line. The power to rate ratio was in line with what Betaflight's base tune works for. This version, power to weight is a little bit different. It's a little heavier with the same motors. So that's the reason why it needs a different tune. And I'd say that might be a little bit of a downside. The quadcopter isn't lacking in performance, but yeah, it's not as powerful. The power to rate ratio suffered a bit, especially of course with the DJI digital version that I have, right? And is that the only? Well, there's one little thing. The quadcopter is well built, but you can hopefully see that these wires are well soldered onto the side. They aren't routed over the ESC. The fit and finish. This way it is easier to work on the quadcopter. If you want to replace a motor, this is easier. In theory, you wouldn't have to take the stack apart to replace the motor like this. But well, it doesn't look as slick as having the motors wired over the 4-in-1 ESC. To be honest, that's all I can think of in downsides. I very much enjoy flying this quadcopter. Again, for me this is a fun flyer. I bought it mostly for my own fun, and that's what it's brought me. Again, however, I did have to put some time into a proper tune for this quadcopter. And let me actually show you that tune. I have my Nazgul5 Flash 2 Betaflight 4.2.4, as you can see here. That is not needed, however. The tune I'll show you works just as well on 4.2. And the Nazgul5 comes with 4.2, so you don't need to reflash your quadcopter if you don't want to. Then configuration wise, I have not changed anything, I think. Be sure to note that this is a props out, so reverse props rotation. If you do reflash the quadcopter, be mindful of that. And motor idle throttle value, the percent is higher than the base Betaflight setting. So check that out. And again, the rest of the configuration is the same. Then this is the tune I ended up with. So I had to increase the P's and the D's a little and the I's as well. All values are a little bit higher, basically because the power to rate of this quadcopter is a little bit lower. So, and typically that results in you needing higher P's and D's and sometimes I's. I did try slightly higher P's and D's, as you can see here, but that didn't improve things. In fact, it made things worse. So again, these are the P's, I and D's, and you can simply get there by using the sliders, right? And let me see, feed forward transition is set to 0.4. I think that was also in the base setup, so no change there. I did try VBAT PID compensation. That, well, didn't improve things at all for this quadcopter somehow, but that might be due to my batteries. You can, there's no downside to enabling VBAT PID compensation for this quadcopter, I think. If your Maybe your Lipos are a little older, then in that case it might improve things. The rates, yeah, these are obviously my rates. The quadcopter definitely benefits from expo, so I use some expo on this quadcopter, 0.35 on all axes. Again, that's beneficial for a freestyle quadcopter like this. Then the filtering, obviously very important, pretty high filtering. In fact, the stock filtering was even higher than this. You could try that. I don't think it's needed. With these filtering settings, the quadcopter flew well for me. So I think again the gyro filter multiplier was even higher stock. So yeah. But again, this is what I ended up with and this worked out well for me. Point of note, that tune was for a quadcopter like this on 6S. I have the 6S version with an action cam mount and a GoPro Hero session. I'd be very surprised, however, if the tune wouldn't work out well on the quadcopter with a slightly heavier camera, like the GoPro Hero 8. So it'll at least steer you in the right direction. It'll be a marked improvement over the stock settings. So, long story short, my take on the Nazgul5 2020 from iFlight. Would I buy it again? Would I recommend it? Did I get my money's worth? If you are looking for a quadcopter that you don't have to build yourself and simply a no-nonsense, not top-of-the-line quadcopter that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, this quadcopter should be on your shortlist, in my humble opinion. I very much enjoyed flying the quadcopter and it hasn't failed me at all. No problems whatsoever actually. So that's nice. And that's my take on the 2020 iFlight Nazgul5. In my presentation of the Diatone F5 Roma, a competitor definitely of this quadcopter, also a value quadcopter, I will do a comparison between the two. But even so, I'd say that this is well, again, a quadcopter you should have on your shortlist if you are looking for a quadcopter like this, one that you don't have to buy yourself with not too high a price tag. And that's it. If you are left with questions, hit me up a comment down below. And also, the links in the description of this video are affiliate links, so you'll be helping out the channel if you use those. Thank you very much in advance. Catch you in the next video. Bye bye.